city of Miami, George Colina. He ran a department over 1,000, was it 1,400 employees? 1,800 employees that he oversaw. But he literally has gone down in history, and now more folks appreciate it today than ever before, as probably the greatest police chief in the city of Miami's history. That is one of the most difficult jobs. I had the state attorney on the other day, and she has a really difficult job. But when you compare those are two tough jobs, being state attorney, being the police chief. Because being the police chief in the city of Miami, I mean, you have so many different issues and so many different scenarios that it's really, really tough. Not only all the 1,800 employees, think about that, 1,800 people that are under your purview, but it's everything else that goes along with it. And I'm going to hand it over now to Chief Colina. But just remember that you guys are going to have an opportunity today to ask anything that you want, anything. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Chief Colina is an open book, but just remember that he is the top law enforcement professional, not in Florida, in the United States. So you're going to have him for the next hour. But make sure, start thinking now, what questions you have about policing, whatever it is. He's seen it. He's done it. He helps other departments. I mean, we're just talking now, not only in the United States, but internationally. So take the opportunity now and start thinking about those questions. But with no further ado, former police chief from the city of Miami, Chief George Colina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, and thank you so much for that applause. That's really nice. Like the mayor was saying, I just retired recently from the city of Miami as the chief of police. I'll tell you briefly just a little bit about myself and my background and some of the experiences that I've had. And then like the mayor said, and I really mean it, there is nothing off the table. Anything that you want to ask, as uncomfortable as you think it may be, as uncomfortable as you think it might make me, I am never offended by anybody's questions. I'm never offended by anybody's concerns. If you are a public official and as a chief, you're a public official, it's one of the things that you accept. You know, you are accountable to everyone. Everyone gets to come to you and say, why did you make this decision? And the reason for that is because we work for the public. It's that simple. And so everyone in the public has the same right, as whether you are a low-level employee somewhere, you're 16 years old and you just started somewhere working at your first job, you have the same right as someone that runs a multi-million-dollar business. That person doesn't have more rights than you do. You have the same rights. You also have the same ability to ask and demand accountability from anyone. So I mean it. If there's something that you want to know at any time, you raise your hand, you ask me, and I'll be more than happy to answer it for you, whatever it is. I worked at the police department for a little over 30 years, and I was fortunate enough to rise up the ranks. I was a police officer working in patrol out in the street in neighborhoods like Overtown. Liberty City is primarily where I worked, Alapata, Little Havana, Coconut Grove, a little bit all around. I worked in Wynwood for quite some time before it was Wynwood, when it was primarily working class Puerto Rican neighborhood. It was primarily what we had there before all these galleries came in and transformed it to what it is now. That was exciting and it was fun. After that, I thought that it would be cool to work undercover, so I became an undercover buyer. I bought drugs. That was crazy. It was exciting, but as you were driving to go make your next buy, you know, your heart's pounding, and in your head, all the things that can go horribly wrong are going through your head. We'd go set up somewhere. We would have what was called a takedown team. I would go in. You're never armed as the undercover officer because sometimes they want to check you. And if you're armed, you're already at a disadvantage, believe it or not. So you rely on your team to take care of you. You go and you buy whatever drugs you're going to buy. You move out, and the takedown guys move in. So I did that for a little while. That was exciting. From there, I went to our special investigations section, where I worked mid-level narcotics. I did that for a little while. Then smuggling, where we worked cartels and big smuggling operations, arrested a lot of people. That was a pretty scary time in my life, because I would go somewhere and recognize somebody, whether it was at the movies or at a restaurant, and you're not quite sure who that person is. And I would always wonder, is this somebody that I went to school with? Or is this somebody that I interacted with somewhere, posing as a doper? And that always concerned me, I don't even know who's around me, who's a friend and who's a foe. It was exciting work, but it was a little nerve-wracking as well. And then at some point I decided that I wanted to move up the ranks. I became frustrated with the sergeants that we had. Those are the first-line supervisors. We had some very good sergeants, and some of them I thought were apathetic. They didn't really care about their jobs. I didn't find that they were effective in the instruction that they gave. Sometimes I was offended that they didn't really seem to care about the mission, and that was important to me. Why are we even doing this? I'm kind of one of those people. Well, what is this about? What does this mean? I'm kind of one of those. So I thought, well, maybe I should become a sergeant. Well, the truth is my wife is the one that told me. I'd go home and complain all the time. Oh, the sergeants and the sergeants and the sergeants. And then one day she finally said, hey, stop complaining. Why don't you then become a sergeant if you think you can do it better? And I thought, okay. So I took the exam and I was promoted, and then that kind of set me on that path where I wanted to kind of move up and try to influence more people. And that's what I did, and it's been an incredibly rewarding job. It's a heavy lift. In the city of Miami, we have mega events all the time that you're always planning, and when you watch something like what happened in Vegas with that shooter where they shot so many people at that country music concert, obviously now I'm thinking about those things here. Well, what if something like that happens here? What do I do about that? How do I mitigate it? What measures can I put in place, to help prevent something like that, while I don't sound like I'm scaring people, right? Because you're trying to measure those two things. How do I manage that? How do I put these things into place? How do I sell that I need to put certain things in place and then not panic people? How do I do that? And that was an interesting, road to kind of navigate. As the chief of police, I have to deal with our mayor. I have to deal with our city manager, which is the administrator of the city of Miami and the person who hires and fires. The community, right, hoping that I am able to build support from the community that I serve, because I want them to, back us and help us have success. I need the community to give us information so we can do our jobs more effectively. The city commissioners, I have to interact with them. And so there's a lot of competing interests. And I say competing interests because you really do have to give time to every one of these elements. There needs to be a certain harmony that exists. And I'll give you an example. It's kind of like that in everything that you do. Even right now as a student, you can't think, man, I like history, I'm good at it, and so I'm just going to do really good at history, and that's it. It'd be great if it were like that, but it isn't. You got to do well in all your classes, otherwise you don't pass, you don't move on to the next grade, you don't graduate. So it's really kind of like the same thing. Whether I like this course or not, I still have to give it the time that it deserves. Because if I don't succeed there, everything kind of, there's a domino. That first domino that falls is easy. You can see where it's going to fall, the first one, but then you don't know where all the other dominoes take you. You also don't know who you're impressing and who you're displeasing. So it's important, especially for you guys right now, to always be mindful. The people that you're interacting with right now, your peers, your friends, the people that you like and they like you, they're going to remember the way that you treat them, even when you're upset at them. And you're going to, there's going to be friends that are going to change. Some are going to leave your life. Others are going to enter your life. I'm sure you've already experienced that. Maybe last year you were much closer to one person than you are now. But always remember to treat people right and do right by them. Even if they don't really treat you the way that they should be treating you. If they're not cool with you, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be cool with them. Because I can tell you that the people that I have come across in my journey up the ranks to become the chief of police, many of them I interacted with when I was much younger, when I was a rookie cop, when I was a sergeant, when I was a lieutenant. And I'll give you a quick example. We had a chief of police, an assistant chief of police, that was demoted back to lieutenant. That is a big, big demotion. There was a change in government, and this person was rolled back. You know, basically fired, but to a lower rank. I was a major of police. I was on my way up. I would still go to this person and ask them for their opinion. Hey, what did you think about this? Hey, how do you think I should handle that? This person wasn't happy. They had been rolled back. They weren't really forthcoming. Hey, why should I help you in this place? You know, I'm very displeased, and I can't believe I was treated this way. And I offered that person a position. Look, you have a lot of experience. You've interacted with a lot of things. Why don't you come work in my section? They turned me down like 3 times, and that was okay. But I was very cordial with that person. What happens a couple of years later? There's another change in government. That person gets moved back up, becomes an assistant chief. Then they become the chief of police. So now they're my boss. Could you imagine if I would have treated that person like, hey man, you're a has-been. You know, you were rolled back. You don't have status in this department anymore. I don't need to interact with you. I don't need to be friendly. I don't need to kiss up. Can you imagine if I would have treated that person less because they had less status? Can you imagine that? And now this person has all the status. You don't think that they would remember? Oh man, when I was low, when I was in a bad place in my life, you turned your back on me. You treated me like my value had something to do with my rank, or my value had something to do with the amount of money that I make. You know, I'm happy that I didn't treat them that way, not only because it worked out for me, because it's fundamentally wrong. You should never treat people based on their status, what they have, who they're close with. No, you should be kind to people and treat them right because they're people just like you. And ideally, you help them today, and maybe tomorrow they help you. You help each other, and life is much easier that way. Life is much easier when you're able to help people, and they're able to help you. And by the way, that feels good. That's a good feeling when someone asks you for help, and you're able to help them. You feel good. Yeah, you know what? They asked me, I helped them, and I feel good about that. And the same the other way around. You know, try not to focus on the things that have happened in the past when you're disappointed. It's always good to kind of remember what led you there so you can learn from it. But, you know, there's a reason that in a car you have the rear view mirror, right? Small, so you can see behind you, but the front windshield is so much bigger because it's more important what's in front of you than what's behind you. So much more important. That doesn't mean that we disregard our experiences. We learn from them, but, you know, focus on what's in front of you because that's really what matters. I was fortunate enough in my time as chief. We had a lot of success at the city of Miami, fortunately. We drove down crime significantly. We didn't have any controversial shootings. We didn't have, made the news across the country for some horrific event or anything like that. I was very grateful for that. They asked me to participate on a global seminar. So of the chiefs in the United States, I was the one that they asked to speak in this global seminar where they had the person that was in charge of Scotland Yard in England, person that was in charge of the Filipino and Indian police forces. And it was all about violent crime, how do we reduce it, how do we deal with COVID and how people feel about that. A lot of people look to the police when it has nothing to do with the police. So COVID during that time was something that was very difficult for us because the electeds, the mayor and the commissioners, they spoke about, well, how do we protect the community? Well, we got to tell them to wear a mask. There are people in the community that don't want to wear a mask, that are offended by that for whatever reason. There are people that have businesses and are thinking, but it's my business, why can't I either tell people they have to wear a mask or not? Why can't I do that? They pass ordinances that said you can't be out in the street past this time because of COVID when we were at the height. As a police chief, it was very difficult for me to cancel Calle Ocho. So we have a meeting with the electeds, and COVID is starting to grow. And Calle Ocho is an event where people come from all over the world, probably 1 million people throughout that weekend. So I canceled the event because I thought that was the right thing to do. I am sure that I upset at least half the people, at least. It always seems like you upset more, but certainly at least half. Well, as it turns out, that was probably the right decision. I really made that decision just based on what I thought was best for the community. I try, when I make a decision, to consider what is best for the community, not what's best for me. I could have said, let's do it, and I would have made all those people happy that wanted to have Cayocho. It's a big fundraiser for the Kiwanis of Little Havana. They use that money to give scholarships to kids like you that go to a lot of private schools. They use that money to fund athletic programs. It's not just a big party. It's a big party to raise money for good causes. Very, very difficult to say you can't do that and raise that money. But I thought ultimately it was best for the community as a whole. And it allows me to go home and lay down in bed at night and be able to sleep, because in my heart, I know that I am doing what I believe is best. And that's really all that you can do. Do what you believe is best in your heart. Listen to your heart. Your heart speaks really loud. Your mind will tell you, I don't like that, it makes me uncomfortable, but you really know what the right thing is to do. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's unpopular, sometimes you don't want to, but you know what the right thing is. Listen to your heart, follow your heart, and you'll be okay. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Sir?
Why did you become a police officer?
Well, honestly, in the beginning, because I thought it'd be fun. So I know that like the popular answer is public service and to serve the community. But the truth is, I thought, wow, this would be great. I can be in the police car, go fast down the street. You know, it looks cool. That's really why I thought initially. I saw the TV shows and I thought that would be so cool. And the truth is, when I became a police officer, it really was a lot of fun. But I discovered that it is so cool to help people. You're driving down the street. I'll give you an example. I'm a rookie police officer, and I'm driving down the street. I was working midnight, so it's like 2 in the morning. And there's no one on the street. It's very quiet. We have the windows down so we can hear in case somebody yells or something. Came up to a stop sign, and it sounded like a muffled voice. So it was my partner and I, we lower the police radio, and we just stay there for a second. And you hear it a little bit more. There was a field, an open field right next to us. The grass was uncut, so it was kind of tall. We get out and we walk and we look, and there was a man raping a woman in that field. So, you know, being able to stop that, I mean, that's something that I'll never forget in my life. I mean, I'm talking about it now, and it was 32 years ago. It was 32 years ago. And I remember like it was yesterday, because the look on that lady's face when help was there was something that you can't describe. And man, that really sustains you. That makes you feel like you have purpose in life. You know, sometimes things don't go well for us. But being able to do that, I thought, man, not only did we stop this, we helped this person, but who knows now what she may do in the future. I mean, I don't know, he might have killed her there. You know, who knows what good deeds that she may have done now. Who knows how that might have inspired her. And we were able to do that all the time. Simple things. I remember we left roll call, and we went by Bayside, and there was an elderly couple there, and they had a flat tire. So we got out and changed the tire, my partner and I. They were from, you know, some other state. They might have even been from a different country. We changed the tire. That felt nice. They looked at us kind of like, you know, your mom and dad may look at you in a loving kind of way. And that simple gesture, that felt nice. Some of the policemen, by the way, the next day in roll call, made fun of us for changing the tire. You know, you did that. You don't have to do that. What you do that for? You know, you're not a mechanic. You know, it didn't matter to us. We knew what we felt in our heart. It felt good that we did that. And again, you know, those people, if they had a bad experience with the police in the past, well, I'm hoping that this good experience that they had with us will kind of change their opinion. You know, unfortunately, people remember the bad experiences more than good experiences. I don't mean in policing, I mean in general. You know, you can get dressed and go to a party, and 10 people can tell you look great, and one person tells you that looks a little funny on you, and you're going to go to the bathroom and look. Does it look? Why did they say? 10 people just told you look great. But the one that said, I don't know if that fits you right, you're in the bathroom checking yourself out to see if it's true. That's the way it is, but that's why we got to fight to make sure to reinforce, the good. Reinforce the good, man, because the bad comes up kind of quick and it bites you pretty hard. And we got to work to suppress the bad. Any other questions? I'll come back to you in a minute. Ma'am? Significant case? Gosh, that's a good question, and it's a tough one. There's one case that we had. I don't know if the people here know the history of drugs, but when I was a narcotics officer working smuggling, the Medellin cartel was really, really big, bringing in a lot of drugs to the United States, and they used Miami as kind of a focal point to then distribute from here. The DEA did a really good job over there, and so Cali, Colombia started to build their own cartel. So we had a case where we were on a wire listening to a lot of phone conversations for a lot of these people. They would bring the drugs in. They had somebody that was called the keeper of the load. They were responsible for all the drugs that were coming in, and then someone else was responsible for collecting all the money and then sending the money out. So we were able to capture all these conversations. We did surveillance day and night for I don't even remember how many weeks. We ended up indicting probably about 20 people or so. We seized in total about $16 million. We seized probably in total a couple thousand kilos of cocaine. So it was significant in the success of so many people working together and what we were able to do and drugs that we took off the street and money that we were able to seize. It was a success in that regard, but it wasn't, like this rape victim, for example. That affects you in a different kind of way. And I don't want this to be too disturbing, so I hope that it isn't. If it is, forgive me. But I remember a case as well when I was very, very young, a young officer. I think I was, maybe a week on, maybe a little bit more. And I went to a call of shots being fired, and I drove up, and there was a person shot, and I literally saw them take their last breath. That was pretty horrific because there was nothing that you can do. And it was a young person. And, that affected me pretty profoundly as well. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question. Significant in size and then significant in how it affected me. Those two are probably up there. Okay, thank you. You had a question?
Yeah. Did it ever concern you, for your family to become a target? Did it ever concern you that your family became targets?
It did, and what she asked was, did it ever concern me that my family could become a target? It did. It did concern me. Like I was saying before, sometimes, I would see somebody that looked familiar, and I felt bad where I would kind of turn away, where they're thinking, hey, man, you don't remember me? We're friends. We met a month ago, a year ago. But I was concerned, I don't know who this person is, and I'm at a restaurant with my family. Is this somebody that I interacted with working undercover? Or is this somebody that I even arrested? So it would concern me. There was a lot of things that I would not tell my wife, and I wasn't happy about it because normally I kind of go home and tell her everything. And it helps me to tell her everything that's going on at work and who and what and when. And she's always given me great advice. But there were things that I wouldn't tell her because, I figured she's gonna worry. So it concerned me. I was always tried to be as careful as I could be, but I kind of fixed it in my head of, it's my job, and somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do this job, and so that somebody was me. I was one of the people anyway. Anything else, guys? Right here. So as a kid, I wanted to be a police officer, but then that changed. As I got older, I really enjoyed history. I was a history buff. It was really the only subject in school that I did well in because I enjoyed it. So the work wasn't hard for me. I just really didn't like the other classes. And I was lazy, and I had no one to tell me it's important because you get tagged, right? Even at a very young age, people will label you. Even if they don't want to, they will. This person's lazy. This person's a hard worker. This one's not too smart, but they try. This one's very smart, but they underachieve. Man, and those labels, they stay with you for a long time. It's hard to overcome them. You got to work so hard to overcome those labels, and they're so damaging. But I was kind of labeled as one of those underachievers. He's capable. He does really well in all these exams to measure intelligence. But, you know, I just wasn't really interested in school, and I had no one there. My parents were divorced. I had no relationship with my father. And so I was always out in the street doing whatever I wanted, and I would come home. You know, my mom wouldn't ask me if I had homework. You know, I'm not blaming her for anything, but there was no one there to say, do you have homework? How come you never carry a folder? Why are you going to school? You don't even have a book. That kind of thing. But I did like history. And then when I graduated high school, I thought I got to do something. And I thought, well, I really like law. I'm going to be an attorney. So I went to Miami-Dade College as a history major. While there, I took an acting class because I thought if you're an attorney, you basically have to perform in court. This is going to be helpful to learn how to speak in front of people. And then I found that I had an interest in that as well. And so anyway, ultimately, my girlfriend at the time was my wife now. We've been together for over 30 years. I had a conversation with her, and I was kind of lost in what I wanted to do with my life. And she asked me, well, what do you think would make you happy? And then I kind of went back to, you know, I think I would like to be a police officer. There's just so many different jobs. I find that I feel like I change my mind so often. But at least there, man, I can be a canine officer. I can be a SWAT operator. I can work Marine Patrol. I can work in homicide. There's a lot. And so maybe that's for me. And, you know, she encouraged me. It was really the only encouragement that I needed. Once she said, you should do that, whoosh, I went off and applied at a couple different departments, and I was off. But I really always like law. I like law, and if I'm honest, I like to argue. So, you know, the debate in law, right? I'm on this side and you're on that side. I love that. I like to try to outsmart you, outwit you, that kind of thing. That was always fun. So debate and law was always I was always very interested, and still am. I still am.
Hi. I just want to say, what really is on my mind from the minute you started talking is the incredible amount of courage it must take to be a police officer, because not only in your position were they questioning your decisions, but you're in, you know, danger all the time. I just can't imagine how anybody has enough courage to do that job. And maybe it's because you started out just for fun and then realized what what you had really taken on. So I just can't imagine what kind of person it takes to do that. Two more things. One is I just want to mention in 1974 and 75, I worked for the DEA on an undercover task force. And I did such a stupid thing because I was so young. I was in line for the movies, and I saw one of the detectives on the undercover task force that I worked for in line, and I went up to him, hey, Cooper, how are you doing? The next day at work, he almost took my head off because he said, I could have been undercover and you just would have blown my whole cover. So it's, you know, that's not a job for the faint-hearted either.
No, it's not. It's nerve-wracking. It really is.
And the other thing is, my question is, now that you're retired and you've seen, you know, how Miami operates, do you have any ideas about what to do about the homeless situation so that we don't become like California?
Yeah, so a few things, a couple of just from your comments. Yeah, so as an undercover officer, you know, you have what's called some backstops, some certain protections for your identity. You go and you go to the driver's license. There's a form that you fill out, and you get a real license with your undercover name. You pick a name. So first of all, you always use your first name. You don't change that because if someone sees you and says, hey, George, your cover's not blown because you are George, even in your undercover persona. You change your last name, obviously, but you try to make it something similar close, ideally. And again, some of that is in case you run into somebody at a restaurant or wherever it is and they call you by your name and you could be working. You could be there having dinner with someone that you are working and you don't want that. They're not supposed to, your peers are not supposed to approach you out in the street unless you acknowledge them. So you and I know each other and I see you and I say, hey, what's going on, man? Now you know, okay, it's okay to speak to me. Otherwise, you are not supposed to do that because it can get you in big trouble. It can get you killed. And so it is definitely nerve-wracking. As you get older, you recognize more and more the danger. In training, we train all the time, and they're always showing you videos of officers that have been killed. And that's part of the training. Hey, look, this is the mistake that this officer made, and it cost him his life. Well, you see that, it affects you. I mean, there's no two ways about it. We're just people. We're people. We make mistakes. We're flawed. And so, all that plays in your head on how you react. The homeless situation is really, really a difficult one because you see someone that doesn't have a home, they're homeless, and you feel for them in your heart, but you also don't like that, they're dirty and they smell and it's unappealing, right? If you aesthetically, you don't like that. If you're honest, you don't like those elements. The biggest issue that we have with homeless is that most of the homeless people are actually shelter resistant. They don't want a home. A lot of people think that it's a matter of financing, that, why don't they just, build a building and on government-owned land and give them a home. Unfortunately, the majority of the homeless are shelter resistant. They're shelter resistant because they either suffer mental illness, right? They feel confined in places. They don't want to be inside because they're addicted to drugs. And if you're addicted to drugs and you're in a shelter, they test you. And they have rules. You can't be out after 9 o'clock at night, for example. And we do random drug checks. And we check your room to make sure you didn't bring drugs into the facility. Those are rules that these places have. And so if you're a drug addict, you don't want to be in a place like that, even if it means you have a bed and a roof over your head. You actually rather be on the street, sleeping in the street. That way you can continue to abuse drugs. Now, those are the two main reasons. So, to answer your question, it's very difficult, but you try to get to the root of that. Instead of saying, hey, let me give you money, well, all you're doing there is you're enabling. All right? They have money, they can go buy more drugs or go buy, booze or whatever it is. You got to ideally try to offer them help through a mental health professional to get them the meds that they need. So hopefully they want to, get back together with their family, live in a home, get some structure in their life, or you try to get them treatment for their drugs. And that's why it's a constant battle. Unfortunately, in California, it seems like they think we'll just put more and more money in and build more facilities and do those things, and they're not attacking the root causes. You got to go to the root cause. We've been able to help people. Some people we haven't been able to help. It's been difficult. So, it's a struggle every day to try to get to these people and show them that you really want to help them, that you're not just trying to confine them somewhere, that you legitimately in your heart want to help them. Anybody else? Sir?
So, has there been anything that you've probably done that was fun at work? Like, for example, you had like a free day, you were hanging out with friends, like just did something stupidly fun?
At work?
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah, all the time. So one of the great things about being in law enforcement is that you do have time, right? So in between calls, it's your time. You're supposed to be driving around suppressing crime, right? So you're in a police car, and the idea is that if you didn't go to a call while you're actively helping someone, you're supposed to be driving around suppressing crime so people can see you, that you're there, and it'll stop someone from breaking the law. And we did that. But we also took advantage of our time, and we would have a lot of fun as well. So we would show up to places. I was always an athlete, so I used to love to go to whatever school and take off my belt and race whoever was the fastest person. So for me, that was fun because there was always a little bit of trash talk there. Playing sports with people for me was fun. Playing pranks on the rookie cops was a lot of fun. Those are things that we did. You know, we would have, for example, we would make a fake crack pipe that was like this big. You know, pipes are small. And then we would tell a rookie officer, oh, look what we found, you got to turn that in. So they would pick it up, go to the station, try to turn that in. Everybody would look at them like they're crazy. You know, things that you really are not supposed to do, but you have to try to bring some levity to your job. It can't always be super serious. It can't always be super intense, because that's not good for your mental health. You know, you gotta also have some downtime. You gotta laugh. You gotta relax. You gotta get with your peers so you feel safe. Because when you're by yourself as a policeman, you can go eat as a policeman at a restaurant, and every time the door opens, you're looking. Because if somebody goes in there to rob, they may shoot you, not because they want to shoot an officer, but it's the kind of the panic of, I came in here to rob, there's an officer, and they fire. So unfortunately, there isn't, even when you're relaxing, that you're having lunch or dinner, you're still on alert because you're wearing the uniform. And every time the door opens, something happens over here, you're constantly, that's not healthy. So you try to find ways to kind of cool things down a little bit, relax, and feel normal. In police work, I'll give you guys an example of how it's different from any job in the world. There is no other job like law enforcement. One, because of the impact that you can have on people and how you can help people. But really, the fact that you are, like she mentioned, risking your life, if Manny Sid, if his wife tells him, hey, it's a beautiful day outside, why don't you take off and we'll go to the beach? He may think, oh, I can't, I'm backed up at work, I got to go into the office, I got to go to the school, I have a lecture today, whatever. He's going to think that, and then he's going to drive off and he's going to come here, and the rest of his day is going to go by. If my wife tells me that, while I'm driving to work, I'm thinking, why did she say that? Why did she say take the day off? She's never asked me to take the day off before. Is something going to happen today? Is somebody going to kill me? And it's not to be dramatic. It's just, who thinks like that? It's just not normal. But she's never said take the day off on a random Tuesday. So those are the kind of things that kind of go through your mind a little bit, that it's different than any other job. And so you have to find those times where, honestly, you're just kind of goofing off a little bit. You really are. Because you need that to balance some of the intensities that you have in your life. Whether it's you have a lot of homework, you have a big exam, you're struggling in a class. You got to find a way to, I'm going to give this the time it deserves, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of time also to, not let it overwhelm me, overcome me. Sir?
Want to? During your career, did you ever have to take a break from police work because it was too much, or there was too much stress, or anything like that?
Fortunately, not for me. I never had to do that. There are officers that have, a lot of officers, it's a problem, that have committed suicide. It's pretty prevalent in the profession, just because of all those stressors that I spoke about. And honestly, you see so many things that are horrific. I read the other day an article where a person in their life, 1 to 1.5 times in their life, will experience a traumatic incident. That's about the average. In a police officer's life, it's about 800. So that's a difficult thing to weigh. I was very, very fortunate where right from the very beginning, before I started, when I was accepted to go to the police academy, I thought to myself, I am going to make sure that I give as much time to my personal life as I do to my professional life. So I'm not going to work all these off-duty jobs. And I'm not judging people who do that. Sometimes they have no choice because they need the money. I wasn't in a position where I was going to live outside my means. So when I was off duty, I was off. And it was important for me to spend time with my family, to spend time with friends, to go and have a good time and find that balance and not let the job overwhelm me and kind of overcome my life. I didn't make the job my life. It was still a job. It meant a lot to me, but it was still a job. I have other responsibilities. I want to be a good father. I felt like my father was not a good father. And so sometimes you mimic your parents, and you become also an alcoholic or abusive or dysfunctional. And sometimes it's the opposite. I will never be like that. Well, I thought, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to be in my kids' life. I'm going to go to their games. I'm going to help them with whatever they need. I'm going to be understanding of whatever issues they have. I'm going to try my best not to be judgmental, even though I'm a parent, and my job is to parent you. I'm going to try my best not to be judgmental, and I'm going to recognize that time changes, and as time change, there's different norms that change too, and I'm going to be mindful of that. And it really helped. It helped because I had a healthy family life, and it kept me sane, Ma'am? Yeah, I did have to. She asked if I ever had to do deep cover, and I'm assuming that you mean where I basically played a role for X amount of time. Yes, I did have to do that. Luckily for not a long period of time. The cases would not last that long. Once you have, it's not like television where it just kind of goes on. So the truth is, in policing, once you have probable cause to arrest someone, especially if there's violence involved in the group, you have to make the arrest. It doesn't mean that you disrupt the case, right? You're mindful of that as well, but you have to balance. Okay, what has the most value? Making this arrest right now, not making the arrest, and we're able to identify other bad people and arrest them, or the danger that this person may bring to someone, right? You got to kind of weigh that. So I don't know. Honestly, at the most, probably a couple of weeks at the most. Nothing more prolonged than that, luckily. Sir? The funniest case? So he's asking about the funniest case, maybe an arrest you made where you find it funny. I didn't find it funny. I found the reaction kind of funny. It was Easter Sunday, so I worked midnights, and I went to work Saturday night. So, of course, after midnight, it's technically Sunday. And there was a call at a church in Miami, and I got there quickly, and I was able to catch the person that had burglarized the church and, took all kinds of things. And luckily, we caught the person. I put him in the back seat of the car. And obviously the person wasn't happy that they were caught. And then I told him, man, do you realize that it's Easter Sunday? And they looked at me like, what? Yeah, man, it's Sunday. It's Easter Sunday even. And you're burglarizing the church? I mean, what could you be thinking? And then the person was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that. But it was funny to me that I thought, well, you should never be burglarizing anything. You should never be stealing anything. But the fact that it was Easter Sunday, now he thought, man, maybe this was a bad idea. But, I just found it funny that I thought, so if it was any other day, it would have been okay, to break in, to burglarize the church, Sir. Luckily, I've never had to shoot someone. I did have to shoot at someone one time. I did not hit them. They immediately went down, and we were able to make the arrest. That was not pleasant. But luckily, in over 30 years, and working in very hard neighborhoods, luckily I never had to use that level of force. I'm sorry, say it again? Oh yeah, a lot. He asked, have I ever had a situation where the person that I was arresting had a gun or a knife? Yeah, all the time. In Miami, unfortunately, it's a big city. Miami's population is about 500,000 people, but the daytime population is about 1 million because of the amount of people that come in and out of the city. And, we have neighborhoods that are tough neighborhoods. And so many times, I remember I was at a domestic violence call, and the way that you're trained is there's always 2 officers that are dispatched to those calls when it's a domestic violence. One officer takes one spouse, and the other officer takes the other one. You kind of separate them, and that officer gets their story, and you get this person's story. So we went to this call, and we're doing like we're trained. We separate the 2 parties to ask the questions. and the person that my partner was dealing with had a gun in their pocket, and while he turned to look towards me to see if, you know, because you're also checking on each other. You're speaking to the person and you're doing this. You're listening and then you check to make sure that your partner, and they're checking on you too. When he looked this way, that person tried to take the gun out of their pocket. He grabbed the hand and kind of held on. The person was much bigger, honestly, than both of us. Not that I'm a big guy, but my partner wasn't a big guy either. And he held on, and he was trying to get the gun out. I ran over, we tackled the person, and really just did our best to hold him down until more officers got there, because we didn't even want to struggle. You know, I mean, he had his hand on the gun trying to pull it out, and we thought, let's just try to keep his hand right there. We both held him. But things like that happened all the time. I mean, a lot.
Have you ever mistakenly arrested anyone?
Yes. So this was really, really difficult for me. I was the chief of police. So forget that I physically arrested someone that shouldn't have been arrested. I don't ever remember arresting someone that shouldn't have been arrested as a policeman. But I was the chief of police, and we had a shooting in Liberty City where 2 people were shot and killed, a double murder. And we're investigating, homicide is investigating, and this case got a lot of coverage because it was in broad daylight and it was pretty hard to see. And anyway, we identified 3 people, and there's probable cause to arrest them. So all the evidence pointed to these 3 people. We arrested 3 people. The mother of one of those people comes and tells us it was not my son. It couldn't have been because he was with me shopping. And we thought, she looks like she's telling the truth. We could have told her, hey, go tell that to your attorney. You know, your son's attorney, you tell them that. It's their job to get them off. But we didn't do that, and I'm so grateful that we didn't. We sent detectives out. She said, you know, we shopped in all these places. Okay, tell us where. We wrote it down. We sent investigators. They went to those places. They found one place that had video. It was an old operating system. We couldn't really see the video. We actually hired somebody to convert the video so we can see it. We see the video, and he was there shopping. So he was not one of the shooters. So I was notified. Of course, we call the state attorney. We get him out of jail. I'm come down from the elevator, and I'm walking through the lobby of the station, and there's Channel 7. Chief, can you explain why, you know, blah, blah, blah. That was not pleasant. But, and it was hard because, you know, the ramifications of that are pretty significant. First of all, I didn't want the public to think that we just go out and arrest people. You know, I don't want the public to lose their trust in us, that we're trying to do the right thing. So although it was embarrassing that we had made this kind of mistake, and even though I was mortified when I saw all the news cameras, you know, I got to look into the camera and say, well, we made a mistake. We made a mistake. But they gave us information that we were able to follow. We found what the truth was, and we're correcting the mistake. We're going to do the right thing. I'm not going to let somebody go to jail who didn't break the law. And as I drove home, I thought, oh, my God, this is just terrible what's happened. And believe it or not, the amount of people that called me to say, hey, I can't tell you how proud I am of you. And I was like, what? Yeah, man, I really appreciate that you stood in front of those cameras and you said you made a mistake and that you guys were going to correct it. I don't think you even realize how important that is. And honestly, I didn't. I was just embarrassed. I didn't realize that statement was an important one to make. Hey, man, we make mistakes. The important thing is that we try to fix them. You know, we try to make it right. And again, the amount of people that called were pretty incredible to, you know, show their support. That was a good question, by the way.
Have you ever had any near-death experiences, like moments when you thought you were going to die?
Yeah, I've had a couple. One of them, I didn't know it at the time, but there was a guy who was in jail for the attempted murder of a police officer. Apparently this happened in New York. He gets arrested, he gets convicted, and he goes to jail in Louisiana. In Louisiana, again, I don't know any of this, I learned this later. In Louisiana, he escapes from prison, comes to Miami. He goes to Anthony Abraham. I don't know if Anthony Abraham is still there. Do you know, Manny, the car dealership? I don't know. But he goes to a car dealership, says he wants to test drive a car. They jump in a car. He takes out a gun, basically carjacks the car, and he drives into Miami. I'm driving. I see the van. He was in a van. I see him. He had that look in his eye as I drive by. So I do a U-turn, and the second I do the U-turn, he takes off. I chase him. I'm advising on the radio. There's a pursuit. He ends up bailing out, and I was young back then, and like I said before, I can run. I was in good shape, and I can run. So at first, there's like 20 officers chasing him, and then there was 15, and soon after there was 10, and then there was 5, and then there was just me chasing him because I was fast, and I kept up, and I was in shape. He runs into an alley. This is at night. I was working night. He runs into an alley. I keep chasing him. When he sees that it's just me, then he stops and turns around to fight me. So I go and I grab him. He was big and he was strong, and I was, the problem with being in shape and running is when you stop, not only is your heart pounding, but you're fatigued. So he was trying to take my gun. He had obviously gotten rid of his gun. He's trying to take my gun. I know he was going to try to take my gun to kill me there in that alley. And luckily I was able to hold on long enough. While he's beating me, I'm still holding on to my weapon. All I wanted to do was hold on to my weapon because I knew eventually the other officers were going to get there. So while he's beating me, I'm holding on to my gun, and luckily the other officers got there and were able to secure him. But that's one example. Unfortunately, I had a few, but that's one of them.
Now since you are retired, what do you plan on doing for the future, or are you just planning on settling, that's it, like that?
So he asked about what are my plans in the future now that I'm retired. So even though I have all this gray, I'm actually only 54. I know that probably sounds really old to you, but the truth is it's really not that old. So I'm doing a few things. I am consulting for the Department of Justice. They recently hired me to help the Charleston Police Department and the North Charleston Police Department, help them with plans on how to suppress crime. So I'm doing that. I help do executive searches. So if a town or a city wants to hire a police chief, I will help them with their search. Fortunately, I know people across the country, and so depending on what their needs are. And then I help vendors, navigate government contracts because, if the mayor is honest, government is not the most efficient. We're not the best, and so I kind of help them navigate a little bit to, help in getting government contracts. We have one back there.
I wanted to ask, since I want to become a criminal prosecutor, especially since you're working in criminal law, do you suggest anything when working in the field? Because, it's obviously a very risky field. You're putting yourself in danger all the time. And so I just wanted to ask.
So you're asking, you'd like to be a prosecutor, and you're asking if there's some work that you should do in the field?
Maybe like precautions or something like you'd advise me. Yeah, how to prepare.
Man, honestly, as a prosecutor, so again, I know that on television, a lot of times there's movies and shows where the prosecutors are attacked or they're targeted by, criminals. The reality is that rarely is a judge, it happens, but rarely is there a judge or a prosecutor that is attacked. Believe it or not, for whatever reason, the criminals, they don't really go after, even the police officers that arrested them, they don't go after them. It's almost like, I broke the law, I got caught, I'm not happy about it, but you did your job as the officer. The prosecutor's doing their job presenting the case. The judge is doing their job. The jurors are doing their job in judging, whether there's, they're able to meet their burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. So although it happens, it's rare. There are prosecutors that go out and work with the police officers. So there are prosecutors, they don't have to, but there are prosecutors that come to the station, hang out in investigations or in the homicide bureau, will go out in the field. If it's a big case, if someone's been shot or murdered, they will go out to the scene. All that is true, and they will work there in the scene. They'll help the officers interview witnesses. So it depends on how engaged you're going to be, and that'll dictate a little bit more on the level of danger.
So with the whole situation with Black Lives Matter and defunding the police, were you ever scared that when you were on the road, like you would be targeted and that you would lose your job?
Yes. So what she asked was, with Black Lives Matter and the whole defund the police movement, was I ever afraid being out in the street for my own safety, or that I would lose my job? Yes. And that's a really terrible feeling, that I would be driving to work, right? So as the chief, because this primarily happened during the time that I'm the chief of police. And although most of these events occurred in other states, obviously we were affected everywhere. And it was not a comfortable feeling being at a red light. I would see a car next to me, and I was in an unmarked vehicle. As the chief, you drive a rental car, so I'm in a rental, but I'm in uniform. And the people in the car next to me are looking at me. Before, when people would be looking at me, they're just looking at me because I'm in uniform. But now they're looking at me, and I'm wondering, am I going to be ambushed? Is this person going to try to do something? Why are they looking at me like that? I would be driving to work, and I'd have people pull up and say insulting things. You know, I remember a guy on a motorcycle coming up and saying insulting things. And yeah, I don't even know these people. They don't know me. I don't know them. They're judging me. They're judging me on the actions of someone else. I don't like that. I would go to a lot of town hall meetings, and people would ask me, you know, why does the police behave this way? And I would explain to them, you know, please don't generalize. Nobody likes those generalizations. What I would like is, why do you think that policeman, that officer, why did they behave that way? And I can tell you what I feel about it. You know, whether I think that was justified or not, whether I think that was a crime or not. If you're going to judge me, I say judge me on how I handle it. So it's one of my officers, and they did something horrific. Right? They broke the law themselves in the way that they treated someone. What I would ask of you is that you judge me for how I handle that. If I looked the other way and did nothing, then you can judge me for inaction. But I would ask that you just judge that person for their actions and not all the police officers, because I've never shot anyone. I've never killed anyone. You know, I've never sent anyone to the hospital. You know, when we arrested the wrong person, I said we arrested the wrong person. I take responsibility. I'm a good person, I'm a good dad, I'm a good husband. Why are you looking at me like that? I mean, I've gone into places and said hi to people, you know, just to be civil, right? You walk in. When I pulled in this morning, I went across 3 people, and all 3 of them said to me, good morning. Then I thought, that's nice, I like that. Then I said, good morning. That's the way that you should be. I've walked into places in uniform and said, good morning, and people have looked at me and gone, and walked in the other direction. And I'm thinking, man, that's a shame. That's a shame. So yeah, it's worried me. It has.
Have you ever found like missing people?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Have you ever found missing people?
I have helped. I wasn't the one to find them. I have helped, and we have been able to locate missing people. That's always very, very rewarding. You guys are too young, so you probably don't know. There was a case, Jimmy Rice, which was a young kid that was kidnapped and eventually, unfortunately, was killed. We interacted with his parents for a long time. They donated a hound to us at the police department. And so that was always, that always touched my heart. Any time that we could help, we always would. But I have never participated where I was the one that found the person that was missing. Sir? I played basketball, football. I was not good at baseball. I wanted to play baseball, but I wasn't very good for whatever reason. I can pitch, but I couldn't hit. But basically track, basketball, football.
As an officer of law, you would probably have a lot of regrets. So I just want to ask, how did you choose to cope with it? How did you cope with those regrets, or how did you get through it? All that stuff.
Coping with regrets? So yeah, really in any profession, there's going to be decisions you make that you're not happy with. There's no difference in law enforcement. There's instances where after the fact I felt like, man, I wish that I wouldn't have, yelled at that person. I wish I would have maintained my cool longer. I'm pretty cool. I was always pretty cool, with people, I mean. But sometimes, I wasn't. And so I would recognize that, I'm flawed. I need to try to be good every day, and I should be mindful of that. I shouldn't just think, hey, man, I am who I am, and life is the way that it is, and that's that. No, I should work at trying to be better every day. And if I can have a positive impact or influence on somebody, that's a good thing. So I would deal with it that way. I don't want to call it a rationalization, but it's kind of like a rationalization, okay? I didn't handle this the best, but I'm going to make up for it by being better tomorrow or right now or next time. So that's the way I would kind of deal with it.
Have you ever had to deal with a dead man switch?
With a
dead man switch.
I don't even know what that is.
Me neither.
Or
It's like somebody's holding something, say, if you come, I'll blow up or whatever.
I personally have never had to. We've had a lot of calls where there could be a device, for example, suspicious package. So we've had a lot of calls like that and, evacuating the area, that kind of thing, calling the bomb squad out, but I personally know.
So we have seniors about to graduate, thinking about the future. We always hear questions from them or doubts as to what they should study, what they should pursue, what they like. So as somebody that's basically completed a career, starting basically another one, even though it's related, what advice would you give them as to just go to school, study, pursue this, pursue that? You could change your mind later, all that stuff.
Yeah, so that's tough. What do I do? Because you're probably thinking, once I choose something, I'm kind of stuck with it. Not really. You're not stuck with it. I mean, it may not be the most efficient way, right? So let's say you went to college and you studied for 2 years, and then you decide, I don't want to be a psychologist anymore. Those things happen. You should be thinking in terms of, I have a whole lifetime ahead of me. I want to make the right decision. And so, just like I was saying how I've certainly made mistakes, and the idea is that you correct them. That's okay. If you pick something and you studied it, you think you're going to like this, and you stuck with it a little bit, and then you discover that you don't, well, then keep working and finding something that you think you will. Take different classes. Don't assume that you're going to find something boring. If you think you have an interest, in something, find someone that works in that profession and ask them, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What were you disappointed with? What is it that you find fulfilling about that? And then see if that resonates with you. Oh, you know what? I think yes. I think I would feel the same. And if you have the ability to, maybe you can go to work with that person and kind of live it a little bit. I would allow people to come to work all the time. So if they wanted to do a ride-along, I would sign off and let them do a ride-along. Yeah, they can do that. If you want to go and see a trial, you can do that. You can go and sit and watch a trial. You can ask questions of the prosecutors. Those are all things that you can do. So you don't have to go in blindly. You can think, man, I think I'd like to be a prosecutor. I'm going to speak to a prosecutor and ask them. Because when you watch it on TV, it looks great. And, maybe the prosecutor tells you, I like it, it's rewarding. I went to law school. I have a lot of debt because of law school. And I only make this much money. And I have this many cases. And I wonder if I shouldn't then practice some other kind of law. Those things happen. There's people that are prosecutors their whole lives because it's really, really fulfilling for them. There's other people that then change and practice another kind of law because they're thinking, I want to work a little bit less and I want to make a little bit more money. So it just depends on what you're feeling in your heart. The bottom line is that do whatever you do to be happy. People want to go to college to get a good education so they can get a good job, so they can make a good living. Why? Because they think it'll make them happy. That's why they do those things. If what makes you happy is working on cars, work on cars. That's what makes you happy. If it's a trade, you know, become a tradesman. If it's a machinist, you know, there's less and less people that have these skills that we all need. And so they are now able to charge a lot of money for those skills. You don't have to be an intellectual, you know, to be productive in your life and do what makes you happy, and you're going to be okay.
What job do you think you would have done if you wouldn't have been a police officer?
Man, if I wasn't an officer, so I either an attorney, because like I said, I really do like that. You know, there's another team, and you're trying to beat that team. The competitive person in me finds that appealing. I want to present a better case. So I'm thinking probably an attorney, just because I love that whole element of we need to figure it out better than the other team. You know, it's kind of like coaching. I like coaching too, because I like, how do I outsmart the other coach? How do I put my players in a position where they can win, especially when we're the underdog? I love being an underdog. I like that feeling of we're going to outwork you, we're going to outwit you, we're going to out-hustle you. I like that. So probably something, either an attorney or maybe coaching some sport, because I enjoy it so much. I did. We arrested quite a few cartels. Anything else, guys? Sir?
Have you ever lost a good partner?
I did. Lose a good friend? I did, unfortunately. I've lost friends that were police officers. We lost a dear friend who committed suicide. That was very, very difficult. It was heartbreaking because he was a young policeman with a young family, and that was devastating. And then, of course, you know, I've lost a police officer friend responding to a call on duty. You know, I haven't lost anybody, thankfully, a dear friend of mine that was shot or anything like that. I lost a policeman as the chief, and that was heartbreaking as well because he was a very young policeman, and that was hard to handle. But it's life as well, as hard as that sounds. We lose people we love. We lose young people. You know, it's difficult, but we try to overcome it the best we can.
So give it up for Chief Colina, guys. So what's pretty cool about Chief Colina is that he's very down to earth, shared with you. You guys asked him anything you wanted, right? He never said no. He was very straightforward. But think about it. His experience is one of the most important cities in the world. The city of Miami, 500,000 residents, 1 million people during the day. And he's here with you guys, spending an hour and a half to make sure that you guys understand what that job's all about. Maybe one of you guys in the future, 20 years from now, is going to be in the same position. So, you know, that's what we want to do in the Mustang Civics Academies, inspire folks, motivate you all. But to meet people like Chief Colina who could say, hey, I was where you guys were one day, and look what he's been able to do, the impact and the legacy he's left in the city of Miami. So wish you guys a great day, and follow Chief Colina on Twitter, right?
On Twitter, yeah, on Twitter.
We're going to get him on Facebook, Instagram. We'll get him. I'll convince him. We'll get him on there.